Welcome everybody, welcome to the New Ulm Forum. My name is Ruth Ann Webster. I'm with the League of Women Voters of New Ulm. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan political organization, and we're very interested in everything that goes on in our local town. So today, I'm calling this program City Planning 101. And I happen to have a city planner here with me, John Knisely. So John, I introduced myself. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Sure. So my name is John Knisely. I'm the planner with the City of New Ulm. I've been the planner or in this position since 2018. So I've been here 5 years now. Prior to that, I was the Assistant Zoning Administrator for Brown County, and then I also worked as the Soil and Water Conservation District Manager for Clearwater County in northern Minnesota.
And you have a side gig too, yes. Why don't you tell us about that?
And my wife and I, Brooke, we run a small farm just south of New Ulm and have multiple facets to that business as well, and that's been in existence since 2011. And I feel like that kind of business background has also helped me be a better city planner.
Well, in what way? In what way?
Well, a good question, because I think sometimes when in my position, I deal with a lot of regulation, I deal with ordinances, that type of thing. Things that direct people to do something or to follow some certain rule. And if I were to only be just strictly a government employee and only have that background, I might see only one side of the regulation that might be implemented. Whereas since we do have a private business, I think I have a little bit different or another view of whatever regulation we're looking at or trying to implement. So it maybe makes it, helps me make more well-rounded decisions, I would say.
Regulations.
Regulations or decisions.
Or decisions, great. Now, you work explain what office you work at in the city of New Ulm and who you work with and what all you do.
Sure, so I work in the Office of Community Development for the city of New Ulm, and within that office, I have 2 supervisors, Dave Schnobrecht, who's the Community Development Director, and Elwood Zabel, he's the city building official. And within our office, we are housed with the city engineering department, and that's a pretty good setup because oftentimes the projects that we're looking at from the community development side of things need to coincide with however the city engineering office needs those projects to move forward. And a good example of that might be, we're looking at a new development, bare land, let's just say the development behind Walmart. So that's bare land. What types of uses are we going to have out there? Okay, we decided we're going to have industrial uses. Now we have to work with the city engineering department. How are we going to get utilities? How are we going to get streets into those areas to make sure that we have the right setup for the types of uses that are being proposed?
Talk about utilities. What kind of utilities is the city responsible for getting to the land?
The land, sure. I mean, so you name it, the city public utilities provide it. They provide gas, water, sewer. They also provide electricity. But also the utilities, or one part of the utilities, is also streets, getting to and from a property.
And that's all part of planning. It all has to be planned out, right? All right, I'm calling this City Planning 101, so why don't you tell us a little bit about when did planning start in the city of New Ulm?
Great question. So for those not familiar with the city of New Ulm, or those who are, the original town plat was done in 1858. And I don't know if this was the premise of the way they set up the plat or not, but you could almost see that they were taking a look, or at least thinking about zoning or types of land uses at that time. When you look at the original city plat, it's quite fascinating. All the roads are straight, north-south, east-west. All the roads had certain road widths, mostly 80-foot right-of-ways, or on the major streets they had 120-foot right-of-ways. I'm assuming that was because they knew commerce was going to be up and down those roads, so bigger vehicles. The other nice thing or neat thing about that is that they, at that point in time, they did more or less separate uses. So all the industrial uses in the original city plat were kind of focused in the river area, Goosetown, because that's where commerce took place at that point, up and down the river, and then it would come into town. And then you would go from the river towards what we know of as the railroad tracks or even German Street. That was kind of the commercial area, the downtown. And then finally beyond that, beyond Broadway, was almost all residential. But the coolest thing I think about the original city plat is we had all of these parks spread throughout the community.
Oh, yes, and there's a lot of parkland in New Ulm.
There's a ton of
Wonderful.
parkland. Yeah, and I think our founders in New Ulm, the Turners, had the idea that everybody needed to have access to recreation, leisure, and that was the whole idea of having all these parks throughout the community. So wherever you lived, you could be able to get access to a park nearby. After that, when they first started talking about zoning at the city council level, that was in 1935, and I shared with you that document.
Yes.
We have the whole zoning ordinance here, a whole 4 pages long.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful.
Right. And after that, they did another update in 1968. And that was a much bigger document, 40 pages. But since then, there was just a little bit done here and there. And we finally, again, updated the city zoning ordinance in 2022.
Talk more in detail about what zoning is.
Sure. So zoning is more or less designating land uses or designating areas for certain types of land uses. And the whole premise is to make sure that you can reduce conflict, yet provide services to those types of areas based on the type of land use. So when I say land uses, we use general terms like industrial land uses. So in New Ulm, industrial land uses might be they do major auto repair where they take out engines, or another industrial land use that we see in New Ulm, throughout New Ulm, is manufacturing. So we have Kraft, 3M. We also have places like Windings. Those are all considered industrial land uses. They're manufacturing, making something. And we try to separate those types of land uses just because of their nature and what they do from uses that might be conflicting. So we wouldn't want industrial areas right next to residential areas where people might be sleeping during the middle of the day or have kids at home. We'd kind of want to separate those two. And we do that by kind of creating, as you go from like an industrial to a residential area, lightening those land uses as you go. So New Ulm's a great example. We have industrial by the river. As we get to the downtown, that's commercial. It's a little less heavy. There's not as much noise or traffic. And that's a good buffer and segue into the residential areas across Broadway.
And then there's different types of residential areas.
Absolutely.
Zoned, right?
In New Ulm in particular, we have many residential areas. One of the new ones that I wanted to highlight that we haven't had used yet in our new zoning ordinance, it's called the R1S zoning district. So just thinking of how expensive things are to develop at this day and age, and our regulations on what's minimum lot size areas, we thought we should come up with a zoning district where you could potentially have smaller lot sizes. And that being said, smaller lot sizes mean you have less road frontage, which also means you have less upfront utility costs, because your utility costs are typically based on the lineal foot of street frontage you have. So we set up a zoning district where if developers were interested, they could build on these smaller lots, significantly smaller than what was previously allowed.
Now, for people who aren't familiar with the zoning ordinance, those letters mean R, B, or I, talk about the code that's used in zoning.
Sure, so typically in zoning, if you see an R something, that means residential. In New Ulm, we use B. That B district stands for business or commercial. And then we also have I, which stands for industrial. But we also have a couple other ones that are specific to New Ulm because we have some really unique features here. So we have institutional districts where, because of their history and the way they've used that property, it doesn't really fit into one category. Schell's Brewery is a great example.
I was thinking exactly the same thing.
You know,
the brewery district, right?
Right, yeah, it's exactly. So we gave it its own district because, they have retail, they have manufacturing, they have entertainment, they have, you name it, they do it out at the brewery. And it doesn't really fit into a small category. Okay.
And now, I know that you went through, just in the past year or so, you really updated the zoning ordinance. Explain what an ordinance is as opposed to a plan, because we're going to be getting into planning, but
Okay.
it's a zoning ordinance, right?
Yeah, so the ordinance is, it's a set of regulations that are spread throughout the city, and those regulations are based on the land use in whatever area that they're regulating. So we did do a major update. So in 1968, our zoning ordinance was 40 pages, and it was like that for a long time until 2022. Now it's over 400 pages. So, but the reason there's so much more detail in this new one is because there was a lot of things that came to light between 1968 and 2022, things that we need to address. And you know, you talked about it before.
Right. Well, my experience was when I was on city council, anytime someone wanted to build a twin home, it had to go through this entire process of asking for a variance. And yet, twin homes were becoming very popular, and it was just really costly and time-consuming, and so what happened?
Right, so so when you talk about twin homes, essentially what a twin home is two single-family homes that have a shared common wall, and usually where that common wall is, there's a property line. So since our zoning, or our old zoning ordinance they looked at it as single-family homes, and so each property would have to get a variance or a setback variance from the property line to be able to have that common wall. Well, twin homes are more and more common. We're getting them built all the time in New Ulm, and so now we have written into our ordinance, rather than having to get a variance, because this is the way development has gone. If you are building a twin home or planning a twin home, it's just a permitted use. You no longer need to have a variance to do that type of development, to get a setback variance from the property.
Talk about some of the other things where zoning has changed or might be changing in the future because of changing uses.
Okay, wow. So there's a lot of them. One of the things we're looking at right now, and if whoever's watching this would like to weigh in on, is there's a lot more interest in residential development in the downtown. There always kind of was residential development in the downtown, but it was typically the shop owners that lived on the second floor. Well, that's kind of changed, and now there's just more and more people wanting to live downtown. And we're actually taking a look at our parking requirements in the downtown. Currently require for every residential unit in the downtown, you have to have 2 off-street parking stalls. And you know, thinking of the times that we're in, people potentially are driving, you know, they might be one vehicle households, or it might be a one vehicle apartment. Do we really need 2 off-street parking stalls for that one single unit?
Because that's a cost.
Oh, major cost. Yeah, the last time we did some research on what one parking stall costs to develop, it's about $20,000 just for a single parking stall.
Oh my goodness.
Pretty high.
Talk about, we mentioned setbacks. Talk about what a setback is and why they're required. And
Sure, so a setback is a distance, in many cases, it would be a distance where a structure or certain type of use has to be from a property line. And in residential areas, we have setbacks from, call it the side, front, and rear yard. So front yard is always where the street is. The rear yard is the opposite of the front yard, and the 2 side yards are where you are abutting your neighbor's property. And those setbacks, the whole idea is not only to have space between structures, but also there's things like fire safety, for instance. So our ordinances not only are just based on what is kind of what we want the look to be, but it also has to do with building safety and fire safety.
okay. Now, maybe this is obvious, but there are a lot of houses in New Ulm that are built right up to the alley or right up to the front. Or how is that handled?
Interesting.
Grandfathered in.
Yeah, so those are grandfathered in. You know, but they're considered non-conforming.
Okay.
So non-conforming means that they are currently allowed, but they don't conform with the current regulations. So we have a whole section in ordinance on nonconforming uses. And what we've basically, what the nonconformity is allowed to do is to remain, but not expand the nonconformity. So if your building is right at the front property line, you can't expand right at the front of your building to be within that setback area. Now, that being said, especially in our residential areas, if you go down any of our side streets, like Payne's a good example, you might have one residence that's 10 feet off the front yard property line, the next one is 30 feet off the front yard property line, and here you are in the middle, kind of in no man's land, and where you go, where can you go? So we develop regulations to kind of create some uniformity. We basically take the average of the two abutting properties and their structures, and then that's how far you can go to the front property line.
Where can people find the zoning regulations?
Sure, if you just Google City of New Ulm zoning regulations, that'll take you to the community development page, and then you just click on Appendix A, City Zoning Ordinance, and that is a whole PDF. And if you look at it on the internet, it is kind of nice to use because you can search keywords within that ordinance. Just do Control F and find whatever you're looking for.
And I know from experience that you can also call the city planner and ask, make sure you understand before you put a shovel in the ground, right?
Right, absolutely. And that's a good thing to highlight because we have no problems going out and visiting you on your site, helping you with measuring setbacks, that type of thing. That is no problem for us, and we're really happy to help you do that.
And when new property is going in, is the city involved in inspecting, or how is that Elwood?
Yes, that's Elwood. Elwood Zabel, the building official. Anytime a new structure is being built, he takes a look at the plans to make sure it's not only meeting state building code, but he's also working with us to make sure it's meeting all the zoning regulations as well.
All right. Now, I think we've covered everything I wanted to cover in zoning, and I know that you are working on completing what is called a comprehensive plan.
Right.
Can you talk? What is it? What in the world is a comprehensive plan?
Sure. So a comprehensive plan is basically the City of New Ulm's official statement on where they are currently and where they want to be in the future. It's really a physical development plan. So if you were to take a bird's eye view of New Ulm and say, okay, looking out to the west, where do we want to expand? And if we do want to expand out there, what are we wanting that expansion to look like? Is it going to be commercial? Is it going to be residential? Is it going to be industrial? But within the city's official statement, we are also garnering a whole bunch of community input on the plan. That is so it's supposed to be a community-driven, community-led plan. This 2020, or the plan that we're working on right now, was last updated in 2007. We've gone through much of the process, and we had really good community input with this last one. We had 2,000 something people take the survey and provide input on.
Well, I was going to ask why and how. So we're talking about the how. You had a number of in-person meetings, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, we actually had a 3-day rapid planning workshop. So within this plan, we're also looking at 4 areas that are kind of ripe for development, kind of behind Walmart, out towards the airport, Cottonwood Street, so Adams Park beyond that. And then we're also looking at the downtown. How do we best use the downtown area?
Yes, that 3-day, what did you call it again?
Rapid planning.
And you had some consultants coming in, right?
Right. We have the consultants, Short Elliott Hendrickson out of Minneapolis. They're helping us. They're our consultants with this plan, so they're kind of packaging together all the work that's being done. But they led these rapid planning sessions, which were kind of neat because they came with a concept or ideas about these 4 different areas. They asked the community to come in, provide input, and then actually we went out to the sites after that. And then they worked all night long, came up with these sketches and designs and concepts and put them together for these 4 areas based on what they heard from the community and then presented it during that workshop. So it was pretty neat.
It was fun. was a lot of fun. And I shouldn't, no promises, but how close are you to feeling like that comprehensive plan is complete? And then once you feel it's complete, then what's the next step?
So I would say we're within a month or so of it being completed. Then the next steps will be that we are actually going to have some more public outreach. We're going to present the draft to the community and have a session where they can come and speak on it after they've had a chance to review it. Then it goes to the city council for their review, and once the city council approves and adopts it, then it's implemented.
Then it's it. All right. And then let's talk about the why. Why have this comprehensive plan? Why?
Why? So really the whole idea is that the community knows what they're looking at in the long term. So I'll just use examples. So if you are a person up in that Cottonwood Street area, right now, if you've ever been out there, that's all residential. And we're making plans out there for future residential. And the whole idea is that if you're a homeowner out there, you know what's going to be taking place down the road. You have some sense of what's going to be taking place down the road. Not that all of a sudden next to your house there's going to be a big department store or something like that popping up right next to your house. Gives you some kind of peace of mind and provides some long-term stability.
Okay, good, thanks. Now, we've talked about a comprehensive plan. I know that there's something in the works. I know it's happening. Well, there's a strategic plan, and it seems like there's a lot of different pieces to that. Can you talk about what a strategic plan is and what's the difference between a strategic plan and a comprehensive plan?
Sure. So a strategic plan is a little bit more specific than a comprehensive plan. The strategic plan is more of like, what are we looking to do in 5 years? The city council, along with the rest of the community, kind of sets the agenda for what the strategic plan is going to tackle. And then how are we going to implement that over the next 5 years? The comprehensive plan, on the other hand, is much more long-term. We're looking out over a 20-year period minimum to see how we want to develop or use the land. The strategic plan, though, it's focused on the implementation part. How are we going to make these things happen? And one example I had mentioned to you was, the community says that we need more water features in our parks. So in our strategic plan, how are we going to strategically accomplish what the community is telling us, that we want more water features? Are we going to put a new splash pad here? How are we going to raise the funding to do that? That sort of thing. And
what I think another thing is that the strategic plan is things that the city has control over, more or less.
Yeah.
Right? Because the city is not building a Walmart, and the city is not building a department store, but the city is putting in a splash pad.
Exactly. And that brings up a really good point. We have land use regulation, we have these comprehensive plans, what we want to do in the long term, but the reality is there are market forces that we have no control over. And it could be that we want business here, but it could be that business does not want to develop there, so we have to look somewhere else. So we're trying to plan this to the best of our ability, but we also have to understand that not all of it's in our control.
And I know, because I'm on the library board, that the library board has a strategic plan. And I know, because I read the paper, that the Economic Development Authority is looking at a strategic plan. Are there other little sub-parts of the strategic plan that we should know about?
Well, the strategic plan, the one that you're referring to, is for the city, the whole city.
The whole city.
Yep. So I would say that those actions are set by the council and the community. And then it's also the whole idea behind that one, with city council led, is it also creates a bit of accountability for the city as well.
Right. You said that you were going to do this.
What? Yeah, right, exactly.
You said you were going to do this. But we said we were going to talk about Planning 101, City Planning 101, and I think you've done a great job.
Sure.
I think people say New Ulm is a well-planned city and has been from the very start. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah. I just think that the way that this community has developed and continues to develop. It's just, I have a whole new appreciation. I grew up here, but then moved away for some time, and it's fascinating to me how many people are moving back to the community. And I think they see some of the things that those of us that have lived here for a while, might simply glance over or take for granted, for lack of a better term. And it's really nice to hear, and maybe that is part of why New Ulm's so great.
Yeah, it's great. It's a great place, well-planned city. Got a great city planner.
Thank
you, John. And thank you all for listening. And stay tuned. What are we going to do for City Planning 201 or whatever?
To be determined.
To be determined. Okay. Thank you, everybody.